Hello, everyone. This is your host, Manoj Tandon. Welcome to another episode of Dark Rhiino Security, Security Confidential. We have another fabulous guest here today, and I'll announce him in a second. But please hit the like and subscribe button. I know algorithms are everything in this world that we in the digital landscape, and showing us a little love helps us to keep bringing you this great content and having all the great guests that we do. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce all of our listeners to Santosh Kaveti. Santosh is the CEO and founder of ProArch. He's been in the business for over 20 years. He's fathered this company, brought in huge investments, and is a thriving force in the industry. You know, he has tremendous experience as a technologist, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, as an advisor. And he also does some social work, which is, we'll try and get into a little bit of that. But his company is a force to contend with in the energy, healthcare, and life sciences sector and manufacturing. And welcome to the show, Santosh.
Thank you, Manoj. You're very kind with those words, and I'm glad to be here.
So ProArch,
Yes, sir.
was that the vision for the company when you first started it?
Yes, the vision was, hey, let's all aspire to be really professional architects. The architect of creating something, creating code, creating infrastructure. So anywhere you go, right, you have a little architect in you that's striving to bring that creativity out.
So then we need to rewind, because that's a very interesting point you make. How did you get to the point of wanting to unleash a professional architect? So what was your journey here like? I imagine you're in Atlanta now, right?
I
So
am in Atlanta.
were you always, the India to Atlanta direct, or was it a long journey?
Oh, it's a long journey. Short summary version is I came to States to do my master's, and I had completely different plans. I was actually going to do a PhD in applied mathematics, but life happened. Decided to drop out, pick a job. Started off as a programmer, and then about maybe 5 6 years into it, I decided to found ProArch. That's the journey. That's how it started.
Now, when you were in the programming business, just to kind of get a sense of the timeline, was this in the era of, let's say, Java or C or COBOL? Which era?
So when I got into programming, we were converting an ERP that was backbone was HP 3000, full HP 3000 green screens as well, and we were trying to modernize a lot of COBOL, ton of COBOL. So we were trying to modernize that into client server architecture. It was an
Man,
attempt made with VB. Anyway, then there was another attempt made with Java servlets combination, and then moved on to Microsoft technologies, especially Windows.NET and Windows Forms and so on. So I've seen that the entire path. And as you rightly know, there is still a ton of COBOL, right? I mean, most of the
you know what?
backbone is still on COBOL. So
Yes, there is. And it's a very good consulting job, because there's not that many people who actually know it.
could not agree with you more. Absolutely.
If you know COBOL, you could make a good living, a very good living, at least right now. So in that journey, what prompted you, or what sparked the imagination that there's a better way to do this? And
I realized that when it comes to what matters, um, there was a lot of inefficiency. We were spending millions of dollars on things that didn't matter, especially when you're building a product, right? You have big teams. I was amazed with how much wastage there was in terms of priority and effort, and the the discussions around what matters, why they matter, and what technologies to pick. So I always went straight to what matters the most, protect what matters the most, and work from there. But I found myself in many situations where we were protecting what really doesn't matter, or we were spending more time on what didn't matter. And customers drive a lot of that, but still, then I told myself, no, there's got to be a better way to do this. Even from security perspective, if I may, my first introduction was really like anybody else. I was trying to tick the boxes. Hey, we need to get VAPT done. Why do we need to get VAPT done? Because we need to. This RFP requires me to have a VAPT done, or I've got to have VAPT done to pass this something, an audit or a checklist or whatever it is. That's when I started questioning. Okay, how do we go about not looking this as a checkbox exercise? How do we go about not trying to just even protect, but I'll actually build trust? How do we transform the thinking from I have tools, I'm doing what I can, to how can we really build trust and resilience in the business? That changed my thinking. But a lot of initial experience was about check boxes, about compliance. Okay, we need to be PCI compliant. We had a payment gateway to protect, and therefore, okay, we've got to go to what's in scope, what's not in scope. It was more about that, and I was like, no, 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 this is not how we should think. Okay, compliance really should be the outcome of good security and good hygiene. But that it was good journey to go through though. And then that's what taught me, how do we even look at security from different perspective.
See, you made all my points in the last 170 episodes. And a lot of other guests that have been on, they've said the same thing. But you know what's interesting about that? You as a CEO have that thought process. But when we look at the industry, I'm not so sure the industry is on that same page. It's all about products. And in a lot of ways, it's a lot about checkboxes still.
It is, and it's unfortunate, and it's not. It's actually boils down to not having the right conversation, or especially with CEOs and boards. Often the conversations are siloed. It's about liability insurance, or it's about budget for security. I tell people, the minute you actually talk about budget for security, you're doing something wrong. Security doesn't really have a should technically have a budget of its own. It's not a silo. It doesn't sit outside of some box. It's everywhere in the business. So the new way of thinking, at least that I am trying to educate, is every business function should have a budget for security. That's the only way you can operationalize the culture of security. Okay, it's those essentially wrong conversations, wrong timing, and projecting security as a cost center. It's or a driver, or a catalyst, not to speed things up or drive innovation, but to stop innovation. It's
That's
looked at as
right.
a blocker, not an enabler. And all of those are myths. All of those are wrong conversations. If you are ever in that conversation, just know that you have the wrong culture.
And that would be 99.5% of everybody floating around out.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, because we've said the exact same thing. And we've, in fact, quoted what you just said. We believe that security, good cybersecurity should result, compliance is going to be an outcome of good cyber, right? Not the other way around. And it's about protecting the brand, the revenue chain, building resilience in the organization. That's much more about the people and processes that are involved. Once you understand those, then you can look at the compute assets. And only then can you talk about enabling technologies to really protect things. Otherwise, we often get, well, we set aside a budget to do an X project this year. We're going to do it. But
Oh, we get that
but
very often.
but how does that make you more secure, or how does that make you more resilient? And unfortunately, I see a lot of times people are like, well, why are you asking me that question? I'm in IT, and I'm going to put that firewall in because I got a budget to do it, and that's a different conversation. How do you combat that?
Um, well, I don't think that the approach, at least we take, is not necessarily to combat that, and we accept the fact that someone has something that they want to get done and they're trying to accomplish. It's about, see, without earning the trust, it's very difficult to have those honest conversations, right?
Agreed.
Our job is to say, okay, we'll get that done. Now let's really talk about how do you look at your security? How do you approach it? What is the question that you're trying to ask? And most companies struggle to ask the right question. And this is where we help. Our team really does a great job on distilling the business risk. Right, end of the day, cybersecurity risk is business risk. And distilling the business risk into something very tangible, quantifiable, that all the stakeholders can understand. That is the toughest challenge, is to align the internal stakeholders and making them understand, look, this is the business risk that you carry. And defining that business risk in itself is huge, because most people don't understand how to go about defining that business risk. Is it because we have this level of baseline security? Is it, what is, how do you define quantify risk? I know there are a lot of tools and they claim to have a lot of
Sure.
tools, but end of the day, they have to understand what is that they're trying to protect and the priority of that protection. What is that they are willing to put their life in front of it and protect. Okay. And without having that priority of list of what is that they're trying to protect, it's very difficult to assess risk.
So how does your organization walk a client through the process then in getting them a handle on what's really worth protecting?
Oh, a really, really good question. It's easier said than done.
I agree.
Um,
It is much
right? I
easier
mean,
said.
you've gone through this. You go through this all the time. Um, we start with who in the organization can answer these questions. It's rarely one person or one team.
Correct. Yes.
It's really important to understand who can answer some basic questions like, what are you trying to protect and why? Okay, why does that matter to you? And then we try to distill it down to either it's a brand, it's a revenue, it's a internal, just team satisfaction, the
Sure.
customer satisfaction, and that gives us a great starting point. And in fact, that gives us a lot to work with once you have that basic questions answered by different stakeholders across the business, not just IT people, not just CISO, not just CEO. Okay, so that then we can prioritize and create a model through which we can show just, we were reflecting as a mirror, right? We're trying to take everything that they've given us and showcase to them in a way that it makes sense. It's common sense, and say, look, end of the day, this is what looks like, this is what you're trying to do. If you lose this asset, or if this gets attacked, this is going to be the damage. Do you agree? Okay, this gets attacked, this is what's going to happen. Then we talk about, see, I know a lot of people will jump straight into compliance. I've got to be NERC SIP, I've got to
Yeah.
be PIPA, and I need to be this, I need to be that,
Yep.
right? And we try to remove compliance conversation altogether from the equation. Okay, let's come to compliance later. Let's first understand your risks, define them, quantify them, prioritize them, create a model that will help you walk through. Then you can talk about, okay, for this risk, what's the baseline security, what's a good security looks like, what a great security look like, and what the costs for all of those things are, and what the controls are. And even if you do baseline, okay, once you've got your baseline for these assets, well, okay, then you can map to compliance. This will allow you to probably get to this level of compliance. Are you happy with that? Does that check your box? I know I'm oversimplifying, you know, but that's the approach we typically take, and we're using our framework.
That's really good because that's going to guide them to first building out a good cybersecurity program based on genuine risk.
Absolutely, I could not
And
agree
it's going
with
to
you.
put the roadmap in place on which they can then add as the maturity and the needs of the organization grow. Um, you mentioned it briefly. There's this notion that cybersecurity is the people that say no all the time. And it's not an enabler for business. Do you have any examples that you've seen that where cybersecurity has really enabled the organization in some aspect of growth or acquisition of new customers or new markets or
Absolutely, many times. Um, we are involved in M&A. Some of our manufacturing customers, they acquire sometimes five, six in new plants or new manufacturers a year. So we help them really understand what is that they look at from risk perspective, and then say, okay, if you're acquiring this company, let's go look at that company to see where they fit in, where the gaps are, and create a really good assimilation plan that includes security in place. Okay, that's an example, because without having some understanding of where the gaps are from business risk perspective, from cybersecurity perspective, it's very difficult for them to create an assimilation plan. Okay, and that's a big enabler for them,
That's a huge
because
enabler.
huge enabler. I'll give you even simpler example. Um, we data AI. I mean, I know that's a topic of conversation last 2 years, right? And it's not going away anytime soon. It's only going to get magnified exponentially. What's happening is, thanks to AI, we're having security enabling conversations with business folks about data, because AI has given business leaders tools. Previously, it used to be IT and security. They are beginning to ask. I'll give you an example. One of the HR leaders that we worked with, they wanted to use Copilot.
Okay.
Right. All right. Great. Okay. Now they see the value. They want everyone to just use Copilot to ask questions. They want to roll it out. Every function should be enabled by AI, which is great. The important question is, okay, what are my data risks here? What am I exposing to? Am I going to end up giving sensitive data to someone who doesn't have access to that data? It's so good to see the business leaders finally ask those questions. Okay, because they are looking at that as, okay, I'm going to enable somebody to do a good job, but I want to make sure that you know they don't get exposed in any way to some data that they are not authorized to see. So our DLP, or data loss protection or data privacy protection, really comes in play there. That's becoming a huge enabler. In fact, every conversation with AI these
Yeah.
days for us is definitely a conversation about data, is definitely a conversation about data privacy and data protection and access to data. And that's enabling companies in a big way, in a good way. They're not looking at that as a blocker. They're looking at it as, no, no, this is a must. This is a good way for me to enable my people without actually, you know, giving them access to something that they are not supposed to, and then shutting everything down as a result of that.
How That's an interesting example. When you enable a AI model like that in an organization, you really don't have, from what my understanding is, once the model has the data and it's trained itself on it, you really don't have a delete function there.
No,
It's not like the old days of Oracle where we could drop table or
there's
that's
no undo function, right? You're
there is
absolutely
no
correct.
undo. So, and digital is forever. So how do you really unleash this thing without having a massive potential legal or compliance risk that you're not even aware of that may become a risk?
Absolutely. And you don't know how it. I mean, I'm sure you do. I mean, you're in this business, so I'm sure you do. It's so easy to just using simple, not even smart or clever prompt injection attacks to surface some sensitive data that
Oh
you're
yeah.
not supposed to. Right? Okay. So, um, and it's amazing how easy it is. Now, once you look under the hood, and this is the good thing again, we're beginning to have these conversations that businesses should own that responsibility. We're beginning to ask the question, okay, who owns this data and why? And what kind of controls do they have in place? Okay. And most of the times they don't. They don't have any authentication or access controls at the data level. Okay. They have some basic controls. They don't really, classify, categorize,
No.
label.
Yeah.
None of that happens. Now they're beginning to take that seriously, because they realize that until they fix that, they can't use the data. Until they fix the data, they cannot use AI, and therefore they're losing out big time. So now the conversation is boiling down to, let's really look at your data ownership, data classification, data lineage, data categorization, data labeling, and only then we can begin to address the access controls. And nowadays, it's not. I mean, we have great tools that are AI enabled again. To large extent, they can auto label, auto classify. I think that's what AI goes both ways. I always tell people there is AI for cybersecurity and there's cybersecurity for AI. It really kind of goes both ways. So we do use a lot of tools to do that. But that's how we approach, is really without understanding your data. It's very difficult to put any controls in place, and therefore everything else downstream is just effect of how it starts.
That's absolutely, you're spot on with that. And we see that with GDPR. That whole right to delete data. Well, if you didn't anonymize it before you put it in,
Hmm. Hmm.
good luck with that.
Absolutely.
So do you think, you remember all the major companies out there that had huge data lake projects at one time? That was like the IT money making word of its. I'm being a little sarcastic, but I think you know what I'm saying.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely.
Does that put them at a huge disadvantage in adopting AI? Because the
On the contrary, I think they have a huge advantage. See,
Okay,
there was a time where it was all about data lakes, data warehouses, big data. It was accumulation of data. Thanks to AI, now the conversation we're having, with our customers is data products. How do you monetize? How do you build data products? How do you really unlock the value? AI has two mindsets. The way I look at it, there is efficiency mindset, there is opportunity mindset. Efficiency is I'm gonna try to save money or cost or whatever it is. Opportunity mindset is, well, what other services or we can offer. How can we unlock the potential that we didn't know that we had before? So the bottom line is that they do need to now look at data security and take that seriously. But if they can overlay that on top of their existing data platforms in whichever shape they are on, then they have something that they can work with. But the conversation is really shifting to data products. But again, without data privacy, data protection, you can't get to this point. And that's where we are able to help on whatever form the data is, right? The data right now could be literal in any format, doesn't matter. It's easier to classify, it's easier to anonymize, much easier to look at the data, and even apply AI to large extent. I wouldn't say all the way. I still believe in human in loop approach, but still to large extent, automatically do a lot of these things to protect.
which brings us to then ProArch. Tell us a little bit about. It seems like you folks have a lot of capability in different areas. What's the primary focus of the organization, and when should customers be looking to call you? What kind of needs would they be looking at to fulfill?
Thank you. So the way we look at ourselves is we're a bunch of business engineers. Um, you know, and the reason I use the term is we have a very engineering approach, engineering mindset in the way we do things. But it's all business centric. Understanding your business is our business. That's what. Without that, can we do some things? Absolutely. But once we understand your business, we could do a lot more.
Do you get pushback then, just briefly, that, well, am I hiring McKinsey or A.T. Kearney, or am I hiring someone that knows technology? Please.
It's That's an excellent question. Our probably biggest strength right now is we are small and we are very nimble, and we're agile. Some of our customers do confuse us with, are you a management consulting company? Because sometimes when we go into, especially with the power plants or transmission and distribution companies, because done the work. We know their footprint and of assets. We know their applications that they use for the most part. So the language is instantly, hey, we know this ecosystem. Are they using this? Are they using this? This is how we know how to use it. Blah blah blah. And instantly the conversation is, you all look like you're a consulting firm, but it's very difficult for me to kind of categorize ourselves into consulting firm or IT services firm. That's why I use the term business engineering, because we solve problems across data, AI, security, compliance, and infrastructure. But these worlds are converging very fast. You know, unlike before, these worlds are converging very fast.
Very, very
So,
quickly. Yes, they
business
are.
engineering in showcasing how to best apply technology and how to do it in a secure way. That's what we do. You know.
So when you guys had a big capital raise not too long ago, how did you convince the investors that a services firm, what's the USP or what were they looking for that said, you know what, Santosh, you're right. We are going to write this check. This makes a lot of sense. That's the
Well,
curiosity in me. I'm asking. That's what I'm asking.
um, look, it was a journey. But we have a fantastic partners, and having that ecosystem of support is extremely important for a growing concern. And having knowing that, hey, I have someone who I can go talk to, and they can probably potentially write a check for me, if there's a good need, and if they can justify, is a huge support. And having that governance is also a huge support. And we also have a really good board of advisory as well, and that was a huge support. Without getting into specifics there, well, we were on a growth path, um, and we were growing about 20 to 25% CAGR, and we had already done two acquisitions. So we were growing organically, and we were also growing inorganically.
Okay.
The first acquisition we financed it. Second acquisition we did through an SBA. So we risked everything that we've got. So when I
I
say
know
we,
that one well.
yeah. So there you go. So you know that one well.
Yeah.
But in the end, it worked out. So they looked at us and saying, "Look, we had a strong partnership with Microsoft. We needed to pick one. The size of our company at that time, we needed to pick one platform, and Microsoft was great. Most of what we did, we still do, is on top of Microsoft platform and their ecosystem. So we picked a platform. We we started building solutions that matter. We were growing, and we were also doing M&A. These are typically the things that investors look for, and our financials were strong. We were never in debt until that time, of course. And then that's what they look at. That's how the journey started. And since then, we made two more acquisitions and continued to grow organically as well.
That's well, congratulations on a job well done.
Thank you so much.
I know that's not an easy journey. It's a very difficult process to go through, and anyone who's listening that's attempted it knows exactly what I'm talking about. When you acquire another firm, how do you get that cultural fit?
It's very hard. For us, we're a small company, right? Every acquisition matters. So we're not in an acquisition spree where we're trying to buy 10 companies and then deciding, okay, even if one or two work, great. No, every acquisition matters to us. We have to have a realistic expectation going into an acquisition that one plus one, while most people want that to be like five, it's going to be one. One plus one is going to be one first, and then will be maybe 1.25, 1.5, and then we'll slowly, and there will be inflection point where it'll become five. But if
Yes.
you don't go into that with a realistic expectation that when you acquire a company, it's going to cost you, time and effort, and definitely, therefore, the one plus one story is going to be one or 1.5, you will be in for a surprise. And that's the realistic expectation that we go into. For us, acquisition is also not about cost optimization, right? It's about complementing complementary solutions, our customers, our teams. That's what matters. And we're in the, well, as I said, we're in the business engineering or IT services traditionally called function, right? So people, I mean, all we have is people. Our team is what we've got. End of the day, so that culture is super important. I mean, everything that we've done so far, all the credit goes to the teams. I mean, they've done a fantastic job.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So was it the acquisitions that enabled you to get into OT work then? Was it because you mentioned you're on Microsoft was your original choice? And from what I've read a little bit about your ProArch, you guys do OT, securing
Yes,
of OT and data analytics on OT. It,
yes. It
how
was
did
it
that
was
happen?
it was post acquisition, but a company that I had acquired in upstate New York, they had energy customers, power plants, and ProArch also had energy customers. We were in transmission and distribution, but they had power plants. They were in production.
Ah,
So later on, I think year or two after is when we thought of, okay, there's a real need to look at IoT. That's a gap. There is a tool gap, innovation gap, understanding gap, visibility gap. Even today, I'm surprised how 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 wide the gap is just in terms of understanding the OT and being able to secure it. And we thought, we could do a good job there, and we got in. And rest is history. I mean, our teams did a fantastic job in building the solution. A first date was all about just giving the visibility. It was amazing how much value we were able to add just by bringing the visibility and saying, okay, do you all know that this is everything you've got on your OT network? And that itself, they'll go, oh, really? I didn't know that we had 235 devices. Maybe I thought we had 100. So what are the rest of these, the devices? So visibility, then really getting into the management, patching aggressively, then start looking at the data flows for anomalies, detecting anomalies, then starting looking at just protecting them, then trying to bring the data from OT and IT and converge them, and look at what are the insights we're going to get once you start looking at that. That's where we are. That's the phase we are in right now, is actually unlocking the data that's coming out of OT and IT.
so so the data. So first, let me ask you this: from an architecture point of view, are you securing? Basically, you're getting down to the servers that are connected to the PLCs, but or are
Yeah.
you actually looking at the PLCs
Yes,
themselves?
yes, of course we are. We have to look at the data. We have to look at the PLC. Sometimes we have to install the firmware on those PLCs, and a lot of times, depending upon the type of the OT device, we there are APIs and connectors to get the data, to look at the data, but sometimes they're not.
Yeah, I was
So
going to
we
say
have to.
there's it's such a
They're
I mean most of them unfortunately are fairly antiquated.
antiquated. Oh,
They were built in an era. We do a lot of work in the energy sector. That's why I'm familiar with this. So
there you
there
go.
is a you know it's very interesting that you're able to patch and put firmware on the PLCs because there's a lot of them that you can't even do that with.
I know. I'm not going to say that we can do it in all cases, but there are some cases we can. We have to work with the data that we can extract, you know, and then look at the possible anomalies and patterns and see, okay, what the state is. So you're right, that is the most challenging part, is the varied nature of these devices, the age of these devices, and some of them are super smart, and to the point we're scared actually, that how open, accessible, connected IoT devices are, to some of these devices where it's closed box, you get nothing out of that, and then you still need to work with that.
Absolutely. So are you also connecting to the plant process historians?
Uh, Pi systems, yes, yes, we are. So the historian data is super important. That's where we can really unearth the real time value. The actual value of the data is in the historian systems, whether it's Aviva's Pi or any other
Yeah.
historian systems.
Yeah, that how is how are you keeping those networks still air gapped or this is how do you ensure that there's it's still one way?
Yeah.
What's
So. It's tough. So the goal is to do your network segmentation in a way it's as air gapped as it possibly can. But end of the day, you still need to connect your OT data with your IT data if you really want to work with the data. So yes, we make sure that the core production systems are all secured, segmented to the extent possible air gapped. But where we have to expose the data and bring it to the corporate side or the IT side, I do it in a way it's secure. It's completely making sure that all the holes are closed. Which again is often where the attacks happen.
Yeah, and I would imagine then that you folks are doing a lot of work in your architecting of solutions with disaster recovery in that arena.
Oh, absolutely. That becomes paramount. I mean, um, our approach is always you're gonna get attacked, and when you do, what's your plan? And without having that plan, and that's where it comes to business continuity, BCP plans, and disaster recovery. And we actually have rehearsed drills that we go through to make sure that the core systems can be brought up as fast as possible, because for power plants, and even for transmission and distribution, uptime is super important. For manufacturing, the floor operations are super important. For healthcare, for them, it's patient care is super important. Privacy is important as well. But when there is an outage, patient care is super important. So having right backups that are rehearsed through some kind of a drill often, because a rehearsed response is so much better than fear.
Oh,
That way
absolutely.
you're not buckling, you're not breaking under pressure, right? It's super important that you rehearse that many times. That way you can okay, something happens, even if something goes wrong, which often will in reality, at least that get back and go live with your critical system sooner than later.
Yeah, that is we see it often, Santosh, where 60% or so of the backups people aren't able to restore them
Oh,
when
you
you
don't
start
you
with.
don't know how could not agree with you more. Just because they believe that, okay, I've backed it up, that's it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and even worse, a lot of times backups are not secured.
Yeah.
That's even worse. When you back something up, and that backup, wherever you're backing it up, is not secured, either in transit or wherever it is, it's not secure, and that's even worse.
Uh, I couldn't agree with you more. We've seen these scenarios, and unfortunately, we've suffered through some where people are like, "Yeah, our disaster recovery, we've tested it, but I guess maybe they didn't test it enough because in the core systems
It
couldn't."
depends on the definition and execution of testing.
That's exactly right. That's a very polite way to state it.
Look, I get it. Most of the time, you're in a world of making things happen. Your priorities, and someone says, "Okay, go test this backup." The mindset is not that, okay, I'm gonna simulate an attack. I'm gonna coordinate a response. I'm gonna rally people around, and I'm gonna do this the way it's supposed to be done. No, it's about checkbox. Okay, have I done this? And I need to move on because I have something else to do.
Now, you're a visionary, so I have to ask you, what do you think AI is going to do for the distribution, generation, and transmission industries in the electrical or sector? What's going to happen here?
Uh, Art of the possible. I was talking to one of my friends about this. Look, right now, the way what's happening today is a role is enabled by AI, a workflow is enabled by AI. With agentic framework, you're beginning to let AI make decisions for you. Yes, you can orchestrate, and you can, make sure there's a human in the loop approach. But we're there. This is not distant future where AI, can start making decisions for you. The next evolution is AI making strategic decisions for you, not just operational or executional decisions, but actually strategic decisions for you. So AI, if applied right, could transform this industry, right? From the way the operations are run
Yeah.
to predicting and prescripting, just exploding those two. Traditionally, we have done that, but now we have the ability to do it at a much bigger scale, much more quickly, and then start looking at the trading that's done, and then saying, why do you even, what's the purpose of this plant, and start really suggesting to you, you should really have this strategy. If you're gonna produce this much power and the mix is this much thermal, this much renewable, and this much it is, I don't know if this is what you want to do 2 years from now. Maybe you ought to consider doing this, and therefore shift. You know, uh, that's what AI could do. AI could get into to every facet of this. Now, again, this is not distant future. AI could do some of these things now. I know we're scared, and probably not ready to implement these things because we need to make sure that the way the orchestrate everything is done right. I know I often talk about this. One of my acquaintances started a hedge fund that's mostly run by AI, with one or two employees, sometimes interjecting.
Huh.
So um, that's where AI is going. So there's no reason why AI cannot do something similar. Essentially, from enabling person, process, workflow, making decisions to also now saying, okay, I can talk about strategy for you.
I can see that, and I would agree with that. I think it might even speed up the adoption of localized generation. So even if you look at solar, one of the big issues is where people like in Phoenix are putting solar panels on their rooftops.
Rooftops
It's feeding back into the grid, right? So
for you.
if you have much better management of your supply and demand there, you can enable a much higher localized generation.
Could not agree with you more. As storage technology becomes more efficient, that will become more prominent, and even it'll change the economies, how we think about energy. So I know everybody's investing, including Tesla, and everybody's investing in the storage mechanisms. I think that transformation, which I think is about to happen a year in the next year or two, will completely change the way the renewables are looked at.
I'm going to be on the lookout for that. And with that, we're pretty much at the hour. We wanted to give you 2 minutes to go ahead and plug whatever you would like to plug and let our audience know about. So please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you again for having me. Look, I think I would say that there is a one of the myths that I wanted to cover was, if I've often hear this, that hey, I'm too small to care, I'm too small to be targeted. No, SMBs are targeted much more so, with much more frequency than even bigger firms.
Yep.
Two, no one is isolated. I'll give you one example. In one use case where a small vendor got phishing attack, you know, a malware, came in, it spread, and the radius of spread was so wide, it crossed about 10 to 15 companies. So
Yes.
just because you think, hey, I'm a small company, no, it's not just you, it's your vendors, their vendors. It can really go on and on. And we've seen that happen, is that spreading happen sometimes up to 10 to 15 companies. You're not isolated in this. So that's one thing. Two, right now the time is, really to ask, can I survive a cyber security risk or cyber attack or ransomware? I would advise everyone to take the zero trust approach. you know Trust nothing, trust no one, inside or outside, and that will suit you, whether you want to be compliant or not of something. Start with something basic. And the last thing I would say, and we will all be doing ourselves a favor, and it's a very simple thing, is employee awareness. The amount of effort culturally that you can put in to educate, train, going through fishing exercises, but also coming back and learning from the fishing exercises and then redoing it. And, we do that all the time. It will save you millions. It will save you your brand, reputation, revenue stream, and everything. That's one vector that's exposed and attacked more often than anything else.
Absolutely.
Back
No,
towards
you've been fantastic, and thank you for spending an hour of your precious time with us. It's been a great experience.
Thank you for having me.